Greetings and welcome to Skylanders Portalcasters, the podcast where we discuss anything and everything Skylanders. I am your host, Inklander, and I'm joined today by my co-host, GFDitto, and special guest star, Portalmaster. And in today's episode, we are going to be discussing the side modes available in each game, which expanded the games beyond just the story mode. So, Ditto and Portalmaster, how are you doing today?
I'm doing spectacular. How about yourself?
Doing pretty good. And Portalmaster?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm on the upswing after having COVID, but I'm back in action.
Good to hear, good to hear. So we have a pretty big topic for our season finale today, where we're going to be talking about pretty much tons of the different side modes across all the games. So does anyone have any particular general comments that they happen to want to start off with?
This is something I always like to talk about in my videos, but the side modes are just an interesting thing to look at, how there was a ton of side content in the middle of the franchise's history, but the first couple games didn't really have that much, and then Imaginators didn't have that much. But it's really interesting to look at how, like, Swap Force is where post-game content really peaked. And I just think it's kind of weird that that's the way that happened.
Yeah, especially because there was PvP, which is a fan favorite for so long, and people kept asking when was it going to be coming back after Swap Force, and it just never happened for some reason. And it is kind of a oddity as to why that is, why they scrapped it. It's weird.
I do find it interesting, as Portalmaster stated, how we started out with only a couple of side modes, so to speak, and then Swap Force being game number 3 is kind of where the side modes peaked. And then Trap Team just had a little less, and then we saw decline from there.
Yeah.
And then in Imaginators, we got exactly the same side modes that we did in Superchargers, as long as you didn't buy the Switch version.
Yeah, the Switch version just completely cuts out racing. So really all you have is that slightly better version of Battle Brawl Island and then some of the, like, brain challenges, and that's really it.
Yeah, honestly, Imaginators has the least of any game, because at least Spyro's Adventure had all of the heroic challenges, which was a lot of content. It was 32 little side missions.
Yeah, and I really like the heroic challenges. I think that was a really great way to bring a little bit more personality to each character and give them something specific to them. And that's something that kind of got lost throughout the rest of the games. Granted, Superchargers does have, like, the Supercharger Challenges, but those aren't done the same way because they aren't side missions. It's just going back into levels and trying to do different specific things with the Supercharger characters, and that was a little bit weird.
The Supercharger Challenges did have their own side missions, though. That was the third part of the challenge. First, it was the Skylander themselves, then the vehicle, and then there was a third challenge that incorporated both of them, usually on a racetrack doing something very specific, like for DK collecting bananas, or something of that nature.
Right, but did any of them have, like, their own specific level? Because with DK, that was still on Chompy Garden, I believe.
They didn't get a character-specific level for it, but at least they got a challenge that was kind of geared specifically towards them.
That's true. That did exist. But still, I don't know, I feel like a little bit more effort went into the heroic challenges because they were their own kind of special mini-map that had a challenge specifically for that area. And so I kind of like that a little bit better.
Yes.
For sure. And if you go into Superchargers and you're like me and racing games really aren't your thing, you just got completely, shafted out of any real content, because I don't like racing. I don't want to do those heroic challenges, quote unquote, in a racing level. I want to beat up some enemies.
Yeah, and there were some of those with the Supercharger challenges, but it was kind of few and far between. Some of it was very much with having to deal attacks with your vehicle. So I can definitely understand that. Meanwhile, I stream a lot of racing. I play a lot of Mario Kart and things like that. So I really enjoyed the kind of multiplayer and side content in Superchargers, but I understand that that's not for everyone. Not everyone likes racing games, and if you don't, then the only thing there that had any kind of sort of replayability was the, like, Supercharger challenges, giving you a little bit more with the levels, and then Battle Brawl Island, but that was pretty much the same exact thing over and over and over again. So really, Superchargers was lacking a lot of content. Well, post-game content, anyway.
Now, I see both sides of this as fair and valid points, because, as Portalmaster has stated, racing games aren't for everyone. Just like Inklander, I thought the racing was a nice touch. I thought it was really cool. But the complete lack of, and I'm sure we're going to go into this in a little bit more detail as we start going down the list of what was included in what games, but the complete lack of an arena at all kind of took away pretty much everything for those who don't do racing games.
Yeah.
Because at least in Trap Team, well, the arena wasn't what we would see as complete. There was one.
Yeah, and then even in Imaginators, which reuses Battle Brawl Island, each time you play through it, you have a different combination of enemies, and the waves get longer and longer as you play through it. So at least there's a little bit more variation, even though it's using the Battle Brawl Island map. Meanwhile, with Superchargers, it's literally just having to play through that level over and over and over again, and that's just kind of disappointing.
For Imaginators, I would state that the arena, the Battle Brawl Island, was actually incorporated as part of the story, and it wasn't its own full side mode at this point. It's just something you can return to, and it upgrades as you go.
If you didn't bring that up, I was going to, because that's the thing with Battle Brawl Island that really gets me, is that it's not an arena, it's a level, and you have to play through a story cutscene every single time you want to play it, and then you have to play through a little bit of filler in the level just to get into it. So it's really not even a real side mode.
Yeah, that is true. That is definitely very true. And that is kind of just even more annoying about it, is that it wasn't even designed as a side mode. It was something that they had as an actual level in the game, and you could just kind of tell that they didn't really spend too much time on post-game content for Superchargers, which is interesting because Vicarious Visions had tons of post-game content in Swap Force.
Well, I think before we get into all the post-game content in Swap Force, let's go back and let's visit the earlier games and what side content we had there first, I think.
Right, so I guess let's go ahead and start with Spyro's Adventure and work our way up.
Yes.
So Spyro's Adventure, I think some of the most recognizable content from Spyro's Adventure in terms of side modes is the heroic challenges, and those I really like.
The heroic challenges were great, and one of the things I think was so good about them is it really made you feel like you were being rewarded for buying every character, which is something a lot of the later games didn't really do. There is a flip side to that, which is you had to own all 32 characters to get all of the side content in Spyro's Adventure, so it depends on the way you look at it, if that's a pro or if that's a con.
Yeah, that's
very
definitely true.
And then for players like me, it was especially rewarding if you have all 32 characters, because, well, the challenge is geared towards each specific Skylander. You can take one Skylander and challenge all of the heroic challenges and get all of those stat upgrades on a single character.
That is true, and that's something that I had as a note as well, is that, yeah, all of these helped make each Skylander feel more unique, but you were still able to upgrade your stats, upgrade the elemental power, and they did it in such a cool way by having you play through these levels and play through each one with each character, and it really just kind of felt like it was just a little something extra that they didn't really need to include, but it was great that they did include it because it just kind of gave you a little bit more incentive every time you went back into it, no matter what character you were playing with, whether it was specifically for that challenge or not.
And I think looking at it from another perspective, one of the things that they pushed early on when they were marketing Spyro's Adventure was that you could take your character's progress from your game and take it to a friend's house, and you could carry your progress over. And I think that a lot of times when kids would do that, they would probably just start, playing the battle mode and fighting each other. But if one kid, really took the time to do all the heroic challenges, it made it feel so rewarding when you could go up against your friend's Skylander, and they were just this weak little Skylander who they hadn't trained or anything, and you've spent time and you've done all 32 heroic challenges. And I think that was a really cool thing that heroic challenges did.
Yeah, that's definitely true. Yeah. And that's something that carried over into Giants as well, which was great. So...
And then that brings us to the second side mode available in Spyro's Adventure, which was the arena itself. Granted, it was small then, it had a few challenges, it had PvP, but it was a full side mode.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me is that this is like the only side modes where you actually had to enter from the menu instead of from the game.
That is true, yeah. It was kind of its own separate thing, separate from the hub where the Coral Light was. And then the other thing that I really liked about heroic challenges that they kind of brought back later in a different way is that they kind of remind me of the villain quests from Trap Team. And granted, not every villain quest had its own specific area for a villain. Sometimes it was just go talk to this person and that was it. But I do kind of like how they kind of took the heroic challenge idea and just applied it in a different way once they weren't using it for heroic challenges anymore. Because, some of those side modes and side content that they made for the villains were pretty cool in some cases, and kind of harkened back to heroic challenges, which is cool.
The other thing about the villain challenges that reminds me a lot of the heroic challenges is that they change color and appearance when you complete them. And it goes back to the whole heroic challenges, making it feel unique, making it feel like you've accomplished something when you use that villain later on.
Yeah, that's true. It upgrades their timer, gives them a new look, and it really does make it feel like it was something specifically for that villain, which was cool. Same thing like, getting specific stat power-ups when you play through a heroic challenge with a Skylander. Definitely, there are some correlations there. Transitioning on into Skylanders Giants, which also happen to have heroic challenges and battle mode, so maybe... and this battle mode definitely felt like a little bit bigger, a little bit better than the one from Spyro's Adventure. Seemed like it was a little bit more fleshed out. So what are your thoughts on the battle mode in Skylanders Giants?
See, I feel like in Skylanders Giants, both of the side modes, the heroic challenges and the arena, they took what Spyro's Adventure did and they capitalized on it. They just improved upon it and made it bigger and better. And that's especially seen in the battle arena, where you use the cannon or the catapult to unlock more arena areas. And there's a larger number of challenges. There is the PvP, which is still super rewarding if you have taken the time to do all the heroic challenges. Otherwise, it's just a nice, simple way to pit Skylander against Skylander for fun.
Yeah, that's true. And we also do have Brock's Arena challenges in here as well. And those are a lot of fun, because they have tons of different variety. It can change the way some of the battle stages appear. You can do that by yourself, or you can do that co-op with someone else. And there's just tons of different variety there, from, having to not take damage to having to, protect something, things like that. And that's just cool that they introduced that as another kind of battle mode, another way to play, which is good.
Well, and this goes back to what Ditto was talking about with how Giants expanded everything that Spyro's Adventure did. It's really the only game that really feels like that. And I think as we go forward talking about the different types of post-game content, it is the most similar to any other game, Spyro's Adventure and Giants. They're very alike. Giants didn't really take away anything that Spyro's Adventure did for the post-game content, which can't be said for pretty much any other of the games. And so I think that's interesting. And I obviously haven't played all of the heroic challenges recently, but it would be interesting to see if someone went back and replayed them, if the heroic challenges from Giants they thought were more fleshed out than the ones from Spyro's Adventure, because everything else in Giants just feels like a better Spyro's Adventure.
Yeah, I would agree. I know that Ditto's not too big on Giants overall, though, but I would say, yeah, I think the heroic... I mean, again, I haven't played any of the heroic challenges recently, but just from what I remember playing through of Giants, and in comparison to Spyro's Adventure, I really like what they did with the side modes a whole lot better in Giants. It just felt like there was a little bit more to do, no matter kind of what category, whether it was the heroic challenges or whether it was the arena modes, like the PvP or Brock's Arena challenges, things like that.
I actually intend to go through every heroic challenge in both games at the beginning of the year.
Oh, okay.
That's a fun project.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. As Inklander stated, I'm not the biggest fan of Giants, but I enjoyed the heroic challenges, and I'm looking forward to exploring that. And then I'll be able to answer your question as to what it would be like to go through all of them and see how they differed from game to game.
Yeah, I'd be really curious to know if there's an improvement. One of the things that, when I talk about Giants, I always give Spyro's Adventure a bit of a pass when it comes to the post-game content, because it was the first time that they tried to make a Skylanders game, and I kind of criticized Giants a little bit for not having done as much as it could have. Because they had, the opportunity to add a ton of post-game content. I know it was developed really quickly in comparison to Spyro's Adventure, but it just kind of feels like they should have expanded more on what Spyro's Adventure did, because really and truly, how much content did Brock's Battle Mode really add? You can be done with it pretty quickly.
That's true. And, I mean, with any mode, the argument can be said, oh, well, you can just play through it all again with a different Skylander, and it has a completely different feel to it, which is true. But yeah, Brock's Arena Challenges, definitely, they could have had a little bit more there, so I do agree. And, Spyro's Adventure was in development for quite a while. I mean, I think it was like 3 years. Like, it started as Spyro's Kingdom, and then went on to Spyro's Adventure. But yeah, like they definitely probably could have had a little bit more in the first game to spend some more time on that. But again, it was the first time, and they were still trying to experiment with how much they could do with NFC, because we didn't really even see them introduce the light core mechanic until the second game. They realized that at some point during the Spyro's Adventure development that they could do light core, but it just took them a little while to be able to implement that into the second game. So, but still, like, when it came to non-NFC stuff, just adding in maybe a little bit more content, a little bit more side content, they probably could have done that. But still, overall, I think for what they had, it's still a lot of fun.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Even the worst of the games in the series is a blast to play most of the time.
Yeah.
Unless it's on the Nintendo Switch.
Yeah, the Nintendo Switch version of Imaginators is just all kinds of bad.
I would still rate it higher than Swap Force.
Wow.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, Ditto's not been having fun with the 100% Nightmare mode in Swap Force.
We spoke pretty in-depth on that just a few episodes ago.
Yes, yeah, in episode 9 we talked about just who got fired when when they decided to make the Nightmare mode extra super hard with not being able to take damage against the Chaos Mom boss fight. Just ridiculous.
Yes.
I've never played it on Nightmare mode, and I feel like I probably shouldn't after this conversation.
Yeah, oh yeah.
I would not recommend turning any Skylanders game up to Nightmare. It's enough to change a person.
Yeah, I've watched some of Ditto's streams of that, and her trying to go up against Chaos and Chaos's mom. It's insane. Not like trying to get all 3 stars on Nightmare mode, not being able to take damage. Just crazy, absolutely crazy. It really makes you wonder who at Vicarious Visions decided that was a good idea. So yeah, speaking of Swap Force, let's go ahead and transition into talking about Swap Force's side content, which there is quite a lot of. From time attacks to just the bonus missions to there's like the fishing, there's like everything in Swap Force. So what's everyone's overall thoughts on the post-game and side content on Swap Force?
I think there's a lot of it. I think there's almost too much of it.
That's true. There's a lot.
I actually kind of agree with that, because sometimes some of the content for it just feels a little repetitive, the post-game stuff. I mean, at least having 10 different repetitive things is better than one repetitive thing, but I don't know. It almost feels like they did too much. I agree.
Yeah, I mean, it is also interesting on how they decided to change some of it, because typically the time attack kind of stuff, that was just integrated as one of the level stars beforehand, where it's like, oh, just speed run it through in this amount of time. But then they made it its whole own mode in Swap Force, where now you're having to go through and kind of collect timers to gain more time onto your clock and things like that. It's kind of interesting that they chose to split it up that way, because it's almost like they were trying to create more content than what was actually there.
See, I don't know if I'd criticize them for that, because that's really what, like, Crash Bandicoot does, too, is, at least the earlier ones, I don't know about the 4th game, but in, like, the original ones, you could, like, collect the clock at the beginning of the level once you completed it, and you could just play back through it. Now, obviously, it's a platformer, it's a little bit different, type of game, but I don't know if I'd say it was them trying to make it seem like there was more content.
Gotcha. Yeah, that's true, and that does make sense, but it definitely did stray away from what was being done previously with all the side content. Granted, this was a different developer working on this. This was Vicarious Visions instead of Toys for Bob, so maybe they just decided to split it up a little bit differently in that regard. So that's always possible. But then there was still quite a bit of different other content. They had the Brock's Arena Challenge idea back, but they didn't call it Brock's Arena Challenges. I think they just called it Arena. And, that felt like a pretty decent mode. Like, that felt like a pretty updated, and it felt like they had a little bit more stuff going on with that mode compared to what was even going on in Giants. So that's definitely cool. So it's nice to see that they tried to expand on that a little bit more. And of course, PvP came back as well, with a couple pretty good stages, if I remember correctly.
Yes, the arena was absolutely expanded from what it was in Giants. It's a lot bigger. The challenges, there were quite a few more of them, and they were a lot of fun. They were very different. They were imaginative. They were challenging, especially if you turned up the difficulty, which you had to do because you could not 3-star a lot of them on easy because you could not get your point modifier high enough.
Yeah, those were a bit of a struggle on some of those levels because you really pretty much, for quite a few of them, had to set it on Nightmare mode in order to be able to 3-star it.
And then on Nightmare mode, it was a ridiculous amount of challenge to actually get through it.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, sometimes you have to wonder why they made it so hard to 100% a game that is geared towards 9-year-olds. And
someone got fired.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I imagine.
I always think the same thing about the Spyro's Adventure boss fight. But sometimes people point to things like, the story, and they're kind of like, well, it's understandable that the Skylanders story is, so watered down because it's geared towards kids. And then you're kind of like, well, but why did they gear the post-game content to be this hard? Was that geared towards, hardcore gamers?
Yeah, it is a little weird. And I mean, granted, whenever you would listen to, one interview that they would do at E3 or something, they'd always be like, well, there's a lot of replayability because they can switch Skylanders at any time, and we put tons of hidden areas and collectibles into the levels. So, I don't know, maybe they were thinking, oh yeah, the kids are just going to focus on the levels, so we can just make all this other side content way harder. I don't know. I don't really know what their thinking was, but it definitely makes you wonder, who got really mad at Vicarious Visions to where they felt like, let's crank this up to really hard.
Make it impossible. It's just
It's
pretty much.
Probably something along the same thought processes is why they split off the speedruns into time attack mode from the regular levels in the first place. Probably some kind of similar train of thought to that.
Maybe, yeah.
I think really what happened with Swap Force's post-game content is Vicarious Visions got handed the reins for the first time, and there were a ton of different ideas over there that they wanted to try when development was split between them and Toys for Bob, and they just got a little too excited, and they just started pressing every button they could. Oh, let's do this side mode, let's do this side mode, let's do this thing. And I think that's kind of why we see Swap Force looking the way that it does. And honestly, like you said, somebody probably got fired at Vicarious Visions at some point. And I think that's probably why the post-game content shrunk so much when we get to Superchargers.
Yeah, there we go. That's the headcanon explanation right there.
I like that explanation.
Yeah.
I think anybody who's ever been in my stream and typed !VV in my chat would probably agree with that.
Yeah, it's really weird. I mean, and the other thing that could maybe account a little bit for that is, I'm fairly certain Vicarious Visions got greenlit to work on the third game right around when Spyro's Adventure got released. Mm-hmm. So they definitely had a decent amount of development time to be able to work on Swap Force and to be able to work on Alchemy and getting the jumping implemented and everything like that. So that could be one of the reasons why we saw such a random increase in all of this content, is because they had a little bit more time to work on it than Toys for Bob did, because they were trying to release the first game and they were having to quickly turn around Giants. So that could be one of the reasons why Swap Force just had a sudden change of content and how it had tons of different kinds of modes and ideas, is because Vicarious Visions had the time to work on it.
Mm-hmm. And we've only even barely started to touch on the side modes that are available in Swap Force. We've really only covered the arena, time attacks, and battle mode.
There's also fishing. Isn't there a whole, fishing minigame?
I wouldn't call fishing a side mode. It was just an available minigame that you could go play that didn't really have any rewards or anything to it.
Yeah, that's true.
Then you have the movement challenges.
Oh, yeah.
There's the swap challenges. That's a huge side mode in this game.
Yeah, there's so much of it.
Well, the concept that went into the swap challenges was really, really great. It was something that was unique and inventive. Just like a lot of the other things in this game, it was hard for the sake of being hard to get the 3 stars.
Yeah. Yeah, some of the 3-star challenges were crazy. Like having to bounce on every single platform in order to 3-star it. The spin zone, yeah, the spin zones are like awful to control. Like, I get that you want like a pinball kind of mechanic to feel chaotic, but it does not need to feel that chaotic at all. It's just absolutely crazy. So you're falling off the stage a lot. They add fans to it, and the fans are blowing you around all over the place. And there's just some of them that are not well designed at all, and they're just flat out mean if you're trying to 3-star it.
The only SWAT challenges I found to be consistently fun were the teleport ones and the 2 speedy ones.
Okay. Yeah, I can definitely get that.
And even then, some of those, depending on the specific challenge, were just mean.
Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And when you're talking about speed, you're talking about speed and rocket?
Yes.
Well, I remember 13-year-old me really only ever enjoyed the climbing ones for some reason, and the teleport ones. And I just remember, I think, trying some of the other ones and just being like, yeah, we're not doing those.
And then the sneak ones were just boring.
Yeah, I would agree with that. Those I didn't really like playing at all because they just felt really mundane. But teleport I can definitely agree on. It sounds like we have a pretty good consensus on which one might be the best one overall between the three of us, because those, while they were still hard, they felt a little bit more forgiving than like the spin zone ones or, you know, the bounce ones, where if you were trying to fully 3-star complete that, they're just bad. Meanwhile, the climbing ones, those are fun if you're not trying to 3-star it, but otherwise, you know, they definitely are pretty difficult too if you're trying to 3-star it. So they were definitely hard.
Which I will say the flip side is 13-year-old me did enjoy a lot of these levels because I was not trying to 3-star, woo, climb up the wall kind of mentality. So I think you have to look at it from both lenses, but on the one hand, it should be hard to 3-star these things, but it shouldn't be unfair and require an unfair level of dexterity.
Yeah, I would agree. Absolutely.
Also, I would like to take a quick moment to point out that I believe it is Rubble Rouser is not capable of 3-starring all the digging challenges. You have to switch to Gorilla Driller.
Huh.
Interesting. Why is that?
Because Rubble Rouser doesn't have enough speed to make it in the timer for 3 stars.
Oh.
Wow. I mean, that kind of shows you what a lot of people always have said, though, that, like, a lot of the later Skylanders didn't really get play-tested super well, that would release, like, later on in the waves.
Interesting. That actually kind of makes sense. I mean, granted, you would think that it would be almost the opposite, because, like, they'd have more time to playtest them, but... and they could always patch it in later, especially in the later games. They couldn't patch it in on the Wii, but they could patch it in on other consoles, but... You know, yeah, that's interesting. I mean, I guess that does kind of showcase that maybe that wasn't playtested enough, and maybe they should have playtested Nightmare Mode a little bit better in Swap Force, because it's, like, near impossible, if you're trying to 100% anyway. So, yeah, I don't know, that's interesting. That is definitely an interesting argument, is that maybe they didn't playtest some of these characters enough, or some of these modes enough, and I can definitely see that, especially for this game.
And that's a problem when you have, you know, 20 different side modes in Swap Force.
Yeah, and this game also had a lot of different characters, too. Like, this is the first time that there were 16 gimmick landers. You know, Giants just had the 8, and they had Light Core. They had 2, like, new core characters. They had, like, 2 reposing of each element, that I'm saying. So, you know, 2 new characters of each element, 2 new repos. So they had a lot going on the character side as well, because they're having to add 1 new move with a WoW POW to 16 characters. They're having to build, like, 32 new characters from the ground up. And the light core ones as well, they're trying to have to figure out the pose of and where they're going to be putting the lights. And then they had all these different side modes, and then not to mention that this is like the longest game in the franchise when it comes to the story mode. So they had a lot going on with this.
Which is actually funny because it's a quicker speedrun than Trap Team.
Is it? Interesting.
Yes.
That's hard to believe. That's insane.
Is it because you can skip a lot of the enemy battles? I bet that's probably what it is, or part of it anyway.
That's a huge factor.
Yeah, like there's not as many battle gates, so they just spawn enemies and you can just be like, nope, and keep going. That doesn't surprise me. Because Swap Force does kind of feel, in many cases, like just a straight path to the destination, and they don't have as many puzzles that are like required stuff. At least it feels like that. It's not like I've been keeping count.
That and they don't force Skystones of any
Yeah,
kind.
that would also make sense,
Good
because
point.
Skystones, ironically, is not in this one. You think that Vicarious Visions wanting to add in all the modes, they'd throw in some Skystones, too.
You would think. There are still other modes we haven't touched on, like the bonus missions, which felt very reminiscent to the heroic challenges, but weren't locked down to individual characters. So it did lose a lot of that individuality behind it, but they felt very reminiscent of that. And it was an interesting addition that I'm kind of glad was there, and was sorry to see go because it never surfaced again.
Yeah, that's true. I actually really enjoyed all the bonus missions. I mean, I think they had like a huge variety of them. I can't remember all of them, but like I think there was one where you have to like feed Gobblepods cake or something. I remember that one, and I mean they all had a different idea. They all had kind of different theming, and while they might have reused assets from previous levels, I mean so did the heroic challenges. So it was a cool idea. It was a cool separate mode, and yeah, it kind of felt a lot like heroic challenges, and it would have been cool to see that come back later on in like Trap Team.
And I think the reason why that's even better is because it provides you a lot of short content to play when you have the long Swap Force levels. I don't know, it's some contrast too.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree, especially because I think some of those are timed. Maybe all of them. I don't remember. I think some of them. But yeah, it's one of those things where they're short play sessions compared to the, like, if you're just casually going through it, like, 30 to 40 minute Swap Force levels. So it's nice to have that kind of separation there. So if you did want to hop on into Swap Force but not play it for too long, you could just do one or two bonus missions as opposed to, having to play through a full story.
Absolutely. And that brings me to bring up the next side mode, which is the score mode, which was, just like Time Attack, required you to play through all the levels of story mode as full levels of story mode yet again.
Yeah.
It just keeps coming.
It really does, and that's why I say it feels like they've got too much after game content, is because when they broke off the speedruns from the initial level stars and decided to throw them in as their own different mode under Time Attacks, and they've got the score mode, if you're looking to 100% this game, or even just to experience everything, not get all 3 stars, but to experience everything, you have to play through the story a minimum of 3 times.
Yeah, that's crazy.
A great point.
That is crazy. Yeah, just the fact that they had those all as separate modes, they definitely could have consolidated one of them.
Absolutely. Or both.
Yeah, or both. Like, they could have maybe they could have given you a way to get a score multiplier when you're just regularly playing through the story, and maybe added that as another completion star, or part of the completion star. Yeah.
They could have tracked it as a separate statistic. There was no reason to have that be a separate mode. I think I remember playing it once, deciding, I really do not want to do this. This is pointless. Just let me play through the main story again, if I want to play the levels.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that's, like I said, that is part of why I think it has too much after game content in a sense. Because it feels forced at that point, because there's no reason that this shouldn't have been part of a level star, just like the speedrun. The Time Attack should have been just part of the level star, as it has been in every other Skylanders game.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it definitely can come off that way, as, like, it just kind of felt like a little too much, because, the Time Attack, just weird that they decided to split that off from not being a level star. So, I don't know. They definitely could have consolidated a little bit more, and then maybe if they had done that, they could have given us a couple more bonus missions, or a couple, or maybe 1 or 2 more arena challenges or something, as opposed to trying to build out these whole other modes that, especially, something like score mode, people aren't going to be that particularly interested in. So, I don't know. They could have done something there.
I know when I first walked into score mode and I realized what they had done, my initial thought was, I can't believe they're forcing me to play through the story again, but separately.
Yeah.
See, this is the idea I feel like somebody got fired over, because you just wondered, who sat there? These are game developers. Like, this wasn't an executive. This was a game developer that said, you know what would be a great idea? Score mode. Let them play through the levels one more time. Everyone's gonna love this. This is great.
Spoiler alert, we don't love it.
Yeah, it's just kind of funny that it's there. Like, I feel like they could have done just something else with that. Like, maybe they could have just put a leaderboard for each level that just showcased, like, what kind of score you had compared to, like, your friends on your friends list that happened to have Swap Force. Like, that would have been enough.
Yeah.
More than.
Yeah, more than enough, as opposed to having a whole separate mode.
You could have even kept it as a separate mode and just, instead of having, like, stars associated with it, just had that leaderboard. It didn't need to have stars.
Yeah, I would agree. That's a mode they definitely could have just cut. Yeah, I don't know. Ditto, are there any other modes that we've forgotten about?
I don't believe so. I think we've gone through
We've actually covered them all now.
Yes, we have finally covered them all, and I would like to say that this is where we all get heartbroken because this was the last time the arena would contain PvP. And even though the PvP wasn't as rewarding in this game because we didn't have the heroic challenges to boost stats, it was still a lot of fun, and it's a feature that has very much gone missed, and noticeably so, in the games to come.
Absolutely. It just makes you wonder, why?
Yeah.
Yeah, like, everyone loved PvP, and it's just weird that they decided to cut that out.
One of the things I've always heard is they were like, they didn't want to sit there and balance the characters against each other. And I've just always been like, who cares, you know? I didn't play, you know, Skylanders to have this AAA, super refined experience that was extremely balanced. I'm not playing Dark Souls or anything. I don't need it to all be balanced. Why did it matter that, you know, maybe Drobot could kill Terrafin before Terrafin could touch him, you know?
Yeah, like, it's not Smash.
I find it absolutely hilarious that you bring up balancing as part of the reason that they would have cut PvP is because they didn't want to balance the characters when they didn't get balancing right until Trap Team to begin with.
Yeah, Giants is crazy.
Giants and Swap Force, there was absolutely no balancing there.
Yeah.
And it really messed up some characters, too, because they made minimal changes to some of the original characters going forwards. And so I can't think of any examples off the top of my head, but I know some characters played really strangely in Swap Force.
Yeah, and, I mean, one of the things that, you know, I wish they had either kept or I wish they had just changed somehow is that a lot of the Spyro's Adventure characters had a flight ability of some sort. And once you hit Swap Force, there's no longer a reason to have the ability to, like, fly over water or something like that, because they just took that out.
As a speedrunner, I would argue that being in flight mode does make most characters faster.
That is true. That is true. But usually, depending on the character, you have a little bit less control on what direction they're going. Like, it takes them a little bit longer to, like, take a turn. Like, Spyro, for instance, he takes turns a lot wider in flight mode compared to just walking.
For me, it's not a speed thing, but they had the audacity to repose Spyro in Swap Force and leave him with a, you know, useless ability, you know? They had the audacity to try to get you to buy a brand new character that had an outdated moveset.
Yeah. And, I mean, they technically do it again in Trap Team with Spry.
I don't know if balancing is the official reason that they stopped, but I do think one of the developers said that maybe in an interview one time, and that's what people say these days, but it's ridiculous that that would be the reason to not put battle mode in there.
Yeah, I guess so, because they did have that toggle next to the PvP where it's like, do you want to balance the characters? And, you know, it does some stuff. But, like, really, like, this isn't Smash. We're not waiting for patches to, like, keep tweaking all the stats of the different characters to make sure that they're, like, perfectly balanced against each other to make it a fair fight. It's just like, we want to just have some fun with our friends, you know? And, like, it doesn't matter whether they're, like, perfectly balanced or not. It's just like, whatever, you know? You don't need to worry about that. Just, like, let us have fun with it. So, I don't know. If that is the reasoning, I guess so, but also at the same time, it just feels weird. Like, they should have just kept it in. They could have cut back in other areas, I think, in later games, and just, like, spent more time on developing a PvP mode, if they really felt they had to do that. And I guess on that topic, do you want to go ahead and transition into talking about Trap Team?
Well, we've already covered actually pretty much half of it, so...
True.
Yeah, let's do that.
Yeah, so Trap Team, no PvP.
It did still have Brock's Arena challenges.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it did have Brock's Arena challenges, and, you know, I think what they did with Brock's Arena challenges in Trap Team was pretty good.
It was really good.
Yeah.
It just noticeably lacks the PvP that we all had come to love by that point.
Yeah, and it's just like, I don't know. As much as I do like Brock's Arena challenges, like, I'm not too set on those. Like, if it was between PvP and Brock's Arena challenges, I would have much rather them focus on PvP and not give us Brock's Arena challenges, because they did introduce a brand new side mode, being Kaos Doom Challenge, that I happen to pretty much like a lot better than Brock's Arena challenges.
I agree with you on that a lot.
Oh yeah, the Chaos Doom Challenge was, well, for one, for anybody looking to grind all their Skylanders, it was a godsend.
Oh, 100%.
Oh yeah, finally Final Docks, you just put a level 1 no gold Skylander on that, build some towers, and you're like done. They're like fully leveled up, have tons of money for upgrading in like 15-20 minutes. It's real nice.
And on top of that, the mode itself is just a whole lot of fun to play through. It may get a little old and repetitive the more you play through it, because you get used to it and you then learn that there are really only 3 good towers in the mode. But it is a whole lot of fun to just go through in the first place.
That's also one of the most unique modes, and it feels like one of the modes they spent more time on, honestly, than any other mode. You know, everything else that's a side mode is essentially just like a short challenge, a short level, except with the cases of like time attack and score mode and swap force. But you can actually sink some serious time into the Chaos Doom Challenge thing.
Absolutely, you can.
Like, there's 100 different levels in this, and that has tons of different variety. It's across tons of different maps and areas. The configuration of the towers changes depending on what stage you're on, so there's a little bit more strategy there. There's different hazards that happen, like, you know, you have the Chaos Fury meter in Final Docks, but then you also have like the bat houses things in some of the earlier levels, whatever they're called. But like, there's actually a decent amount of variety that they did, and they even took the time to put in the light and dark towers. So once you unlock the light and dark expansion content, then you have 2 more towers that you can try out and play with in the mode. So that gives you a whole nother reason to go back into it and try it out again. So it's cool.
And then there's the possibility of self-imposed challenges.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, that's true.
That just make it even more exciting.
Yep, Doom locks.
Mm-hmm.
Yep, absolutely, Doom locks.
In my opinion, this
Yeah.
is easily the best side mode in the entire franchise's history.
I would agree. Like, I really have fun with it. And if they really wanted to just port it into Superchargers and then port it again into Imaginators, I don't think anyone would have complained.
No.
I certainly wouldn't have.
Yeah, so it's weird that they didn't, because they did that with racing. They just ported it from Superchargers right to Imaginators, so why couldn't they have done that with some PvP stuff, or, you know, with anything, really?
One thing I would have liked to have seen done to improve the Doom Challenge, if they had chosen to port it up, is I would have liked to have seen dual element towers to incorporate the swap force characters.
Oh, that
That'd
would have
be
been
cool.
so cool. That would have been neat. Yeah, I like that. Especially because while the swap force mechanic is the gimmick that is pretty much carried on throughout the rest of the franchise, because unlike the Giants that need giant boulders or whatever, the swap force, their mechanic's literally tied to the toy. So you still can swap them whenever, but it would still have been nice to have them have a dual element something for the swap force, because giant boulders did come back in Trap Team a little bit in this mode, actually, and in Rainfish Riviera. So it would have been cool to see some sort of dual element thing, so I totally agree. That would have been neat.
What actually happens, out of curiosity, when you use a swap force character to build a tower? I never tried that.
That's actually a really good question. I don't know.
Okay, so what happens when you do that is if the tower is a specific element to begin with, like say you have to have a tech Skylander to build a tower here. If your swappable is half tech, it will build the tech tower.
Okay.
Or say you've got Magna Shift going.
Okay.
So you've got tech and undead. You can wander around and you can open up all the tech and the undead ones.
That would make
If
sense.
it is not a set element, it randomly selects one of your 2 elements. and
Oh,
builds it.
weird. That's weird.
Yes.
I don't know if I like that.
I generally don't tend to mix elements for the towers for that reason. I would have liked to have seen that generate a dual element tower.
But yeah, that would have been nice.
That would have been a lot better.
Just like when you use Chaos to unlock a non-specific element tower slot, it randomly selects an element.
That is a little weird. Like, especially because in later games, usually whenever you have a swap force character that you're playing as, it tends to just showcase their top half element for the HUD. So it's really weird that it's random. I kind of would have figured it would have gone with the top element. So it's kind of weird that it shifts between the two, that it just randomly picks it.
And I had figured that that would be the case as well. But when we actually attempted it, we found that it was inconsistent.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah, that is an odd decision. But then again, just whatever they do with the Gimmiclanders going forward anyway tends to just be surprising. Like, oh, traps are now weapons for your vehicles instead of characters. Okay, sure.
True. And just like, I would think that Chaos would have his own elemental tower,
You would think.
as opposed to just generating a random one.
Especially because in the final battle against Chaos, there's actual Chaos bullets that happen.
There should have been a Chaos
So, it's
cannon.
weird.
How is that not a thing?
Yeah, they should have done it. If they actually did it for the Chaos boss fight, they definitely should have done it for Kaos Doom Challenge.
So my thoughts on that when it comes to this side mode are, if they had continued and brought it into the next game, which I honestly feel like they should have, it was a missed opportunity that they just dropped it after Trap Team.
Yeah.
I feel like the only upgrades that they would need for this mode to just refine it and make it better are to add dual element towers and chaos element towers.
Yeah. It also kind of might have been cool if they would have allowed you to use your vehicle in the arena or use your Skylander. That kind of would have been interesting.
That would have been really cool as well.
Yeah. Because I feel like that would work decently well. As much as I don't like the vehicle gameplay that much when it comes to how it's integrated into, like, story levels, it kind of would have been cool if they gave you the choice to use, like, one of your land vehicles or, you know, play on foot with your character. Because I feel like all those areas are decently big enough to where they could probably have fit the land vehicles in them.
So, I believe that has us transitioning over to Skylanders Superchargers.
Yes.
Ooh, my least favorite game.
Yes. This is my least favorite game, too.
For me, it's ever since episode 9 where we ranked the games, actually Superchargers has moved into my number 2 slot.
I know, and then Imaginators is your number 1. You're just like the complete opposite of how everyone else feels. That's okay.
The worst part about Superchargers is that when you play the land sections, I'm like, man, this is a great game, you know? I love this game, this is great. And then vehicles.
Yeah, and that's actually the biggest and most common complaint about the game.
Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much mine. I don't like the forced vehicle sections. I feel like it would have gone over a lot better, and I've said this before, I think, in episode 9. I would have liked it a lot better if they had made them optional side content, just like all the other things, like the giant areas. Those were side content where you had to, like, smash through the ground. Those weren't required. They were required if you wanted to 100%, but they weren't just overall required to get through the story. Same thing with the dual element gates for Swap Force and the swap zones and the, you know, Trapmaster, Traptanium special areas, all that stuff. It wasn't required, but then you get to Superchargers and they require you to use a land vehicle.
I think what makes it feel even weirder is that the land racing is required, and there's no other required content. And, you know, I get why they did that, but it really feels weird when you're playing through the game with, you know, all the vehicles in front of you, and you're using your land vehicles way more than anything else because the land sections are required.
Yeah, it's definitely weird. Either they should have done it in a way where everything was completely optional, or they, like, gave you, like, one Skylander in the starter pack and then gave you one of each vehicle type and just had everything be required, because it definitely was just odd. But some of the side content that was good for the vehicles, at least to me, was the racing.
Yeah, the racing, one of 2 side modes available in Superchargers.
Yeah.
Now, I personally really enjoyed the racing. I've enjoyed kart racers most of my life, so I really had a lot of fun with the racing in this game.
Yeah, I think it's really solid.
But I found it also to be kind of repetitive, because just like back in Swap Force, Vicarious Visions did the thing again, where they've got multiple different challenges on the same track, doing essentially the same thing.
Yes.
You don't just have a cup, but you also have the Supervillain Cup and the Mirror Cup.
Yeah.
Whereas the boss pursuits, they were at least a little bit different in the sense that you were then engaging in what would be the equivalent of Mario Kart's battle mode on a regular track.
Yeah, pretty much. So basically the bad version of Mario Kart 8 over on Wii U.
And the thing is that, like, it's not even bad racing content. It's not. It's good. It's not great, but, you know, as much as I like to rag on Superchargers for requiring racing and not really having non-racing side content, it's not bad, and that's why I always feel so weird criticizing it. And I just always want to say, Superchargers is a game that should never have been made. It should have always have had all of the side content present in Superchargers. Could have been a great spin-off game. Because it's great in Superchargers, but it didn't belong in Skylanders.
Yeah, and it's weird because it did get a spin-off game on Wii and 3DS, and that had a couple more tracks, and it had a really, fleshed out just racing mode in general. It was a really, really solid spin-off racing game.
They took the entire racing side mode and they refined it and made it, I wouldn't say perfect, but they made it a whole lot better for the racing specific games.
Yeah.
There was a lot they could have done to improve it. I haven't played the Wii version, but especially in the 3DS, there was a lot they could have done to improve upon it, but it was very solid. They took what they had on console and they refined it and made it better, just like Giants did to Spyro's Adventure when it came to side modes.
Yeah, I would agree. The 3DS version, it was really good. It was really well done. And I think one of the ways that they really could have alleviated some of the repetitiveness of the racing mode in Superchargers is all they really would have needed to do is maybe add on 2 more tracks for the land, sea, and sky, so 6 more total, and then split it up instead of having 4 race cup, having it have 2 3-race cups for each mode. So land would have 2 different cups you could pick from, sea, same thing, and sky. Just adding in a couple more tracks could have given it a little bit more variety to it, and then they could have done a whole lot more with some of those other modes like mirror mode and boss pursuit and things like that, but they didn't. And so because of that, a lot of what content is there, while it is cool and while it is fun, and the online, if you can manage to get it working, is really fun, if you can manage to match up NAT types and not have to port forward your Wii U. But if all that's working well, it does work really well. But then also, there is the problem where the online for it does kind of work so it's interesting. But overall, good mode.
Another idea they could have used to improve it, going based on your whole add 2 more tracks per vehicle type, they could have also done mixed vehicle type cups, where you did 3 races, 1 land, 1 sea, 1
A relay
sky.
race. That would have been cool.
That would have been really good. Maybe something that they could have done is allow you to customize your own cup, where you just pick your favorite tracks. You pick 4 of your favorite tracks, and then you just play through those in order. That could have been just something to mix it up a little bit, because then you could go in, customize which ones you want to play, and then just play through them in order, as opposed to having these specific set cups. And while you can do single race, it takes so much loading to do single race and get those races in the order you want to have them in. Would have been way cooler to just make your own cup and then just go from there.
I agree, 100%. Would have been great.
Yeah, so it was a good mode.
It was better than the other side mode.
Yeah.
And that would be the Supercharger Challenges.
Yeah.
Which, as we stated earlier, also somewhat reminiscent of the Heroic Challenges, but also not.
Yeah, they were pretty mediocre.
They were weird, they were unpredictable, and I agree, hit or miss is the way I describe it.
Yeah, especially because some of them would have you doing some really weird things where it's kill 50 enemies with your secondary attack, and then your secondary attack something really weird that only deals 10 damage. And it's that's gonna take forever.
Astro Blast. Defeat so many enemies with the somersault, but if you've already upgraded and you have that shield's gonna take out the enemies and you're never gonna get it done.
Yeah.
I had to reset Astro Blast to do that challenge.
And that's another example of what I was talking about when you said Rebel Rouser can't 3-star on Nightmare Mode. It's the same thing. They didn't playtest Astro Blast when they did that challenge.
Yeah, so that's definitely an issue, because some of them are tedious, some of them are not fun, and it's just weird. It's definitely a hit or miss mode, for sure.
Oh, and I would like to point out, the whole Rebel Rouser not being able to 3-star, yeah, that wasn't Nightmare Mode specific. That's any mode.
Oh my gosh.
Because the only thing changing difficulties affected in the digging challenges was how much damage you took when you got hit.
Okay, that makes sense.
Not getting hit by anything and running through the fastest route, he still could not 3-star. So, once again, just like with Astro Blast, it's probably a playtest thing.
Yeah.
They didn't bother to upgrade their character, they didn't bother to upgrade Astro Blast and then be like, hey, is this doable?
Yeah, that's probably what happened, is they probably have a lot of different characters around the office, that are, like, at a certain part of the upgrade path, and they just didn't think to test it with one of them.
I feel like Astro Blast was especially neglected, though, and that's why I bring him up as an example, because also his vehicle challenge, you do his individual Skylander challenge, then you do his vehicle challenge before you even get to the Supercharger challenge. His vehicle challenge also requires you to defeat so many enemies with the scanner beam thing, which does such minute damage that you're literally just flying around in an arena forever just trying to defeat enemies in a dogfight using this attack that does nothing.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. So they're not particularly amazing. It definitely kind of just felt like a thing that they kind of sort of just threw in there to have an extra thing.
But there were some that were fun.
Yeah, that is true.
That's why I say it's very hit or miss.
Yeah, it definitely feels kind of weird or off in a lot of ways, especially compared to the racing, which has a little bit more stuff to it.
Honestly, it was probably a last-minute addition that they were kind of like, we need some more stuff, and they just wrote the challenges, didn't playtest them, and that's probably why so many of them are weird and hit or miss, and if I had to guess.
Yeah, I bet that was probably a last-minute addition thing to the game.
Because this seems to be a pattern with Vicarious Visions. My thought process here is, are they making things unnecessarily hard for the sake of being hard? Or are they just pulling ideas out of a hat, implementing them, and not bothering to test it?
Yeah, I don't know. It's a good question. I feel like maybe it's a combination of both.
I was going to say, or is the answer to that, yes, both.
I'm inclined to think both.
I think that's probably what it is. I think they're, one, not playtesting some of it, and two, they're trying to make some of it way too hard. Now, one good thing that we can say about Superchargers anyway, and I think we're talking about Skystones as its own episode later, but I will say Skystones Overdrive, that's pretty good. Like, that's the best version of Skystones to me. So, yeah, I guess let's go ahead and move on to the last game, Imaginators. So...
All right.
Yeah.
So, Imaginators, when we moved down to only one side mode.
Pretty much.
Unless you bought the Switch edition.
The most disappointing, by far, of any game for side content.
Yep.
And the game that also would have benefited, this is what always gets me, the most from having side content. Like, imagine getting to use your Imaginators in a Kaos Doom challenge like setup. How awesome would that have been?
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And it could have been like, more like hardcore games where like completing it on higher difficulties gives you better gear. There's so much you could have done with it. And they just totally dropped the ball on Imaginators.
They did.
They did, absolutely. I mean, Imaginators may be my favorite game in the series, but when it comes to side content, it just doesn't hold up.
No, it does not. Like, I mean, there's just so little you can do. Like, you can do the Battle Brawl Island thing, which has been... I would say drastically improved. And you can do the brain challenges, and those can be kind of moderately fun.
But they aren't their own separate mode either.
Yeah, they aren't. They're just there on the MAP, and you do kind of have to encounter them via part of the story anyway. So really what we're dealing with here is more racing.
It's not even more racing, it's the same racing content, but they turned the difficulty up to 11.
Yeah, now the... non-playable characters, the ones that are racing against you, are definitely a whole lot harder, or they're dealing more damage or something, but it's definitely way harder to 3-star that stuff, or 3-crown it, I think. I think they changed the symbols on it for some reason.
No more stars, just crowns.
Yeah, I think they changed it to crowns and Imaginators. But yeah, so that's pretty much it. That's the only difference, is it's the exact same tracks, but harder.
Sometimes what I wonder, now that we know that there was probably going to be additional content for Imaginators that got slashed because of poor sales, I wonder, did they not include side content because they were lazy, because they didn't have the budget, or is this something they were planning on adding someday, and then they just didn't,
Yeah, it's interesting.
I do wonder if they might not have had plans to patch something in, but we have no way of knowing the answer to that, unfortunately.
I know.
Yeah.
And then, if that was the case, if they did intend to patch something in, poor sales would have caused them to just say, nah, forget it. Never mind.
Yeah. I mean, and the things that were patched in, the extra, 100 or so, 180, I think, Imaginator parts, and then Lost Imaginite Mines and Cursed Tiki Temple, then the question is, like, when did that get developed? Was that planned from the start? Was that something that they had already made for Sky 7 that maybe they just put into the game as, like, whatever, we have this made, but it's been scrapped, so let's just throw it in anyway? Like, who knows? Where did that come from?
I also find it interesting that Imaginators had the lowest sales of the entire series, but now if you go looking for their figures, those are the most expensive figures in the entire series.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the lineup of characters for it is pretty good, even though I'm not too huge on the level design of the game. I do think a lot of the characters are a lot of fun.
And the toys themselves are the best toys they ever made.
Well, I don't like the size. I wish they were smaller.
Yeah.
But see, you're thinking like an adult. You have to think like an 8-year-old.
Okay, true.
Okay, that's fair, because to an 8-year-old, the bigger toys would be better.
That's true.
Whereas us as adults, our thought process is, how are we going to store this?
Yeah, I'm like, I don't have enough room on my shelves. It's like, great, I have to buy another bookcase, thanks.
Luckily, I was smart enough to see that problem coming, and I kept all the original boxes, and I just stacked them up on my wall. But, no, like, if you don't do that, how do you store the Imaginators? They're so massive.
Yeah,
They are.
and the bases just make it really awkward, because the bases are massive, but I don't know.
They're massive, and their shape is impossible to work with. It is nice to have that fresh perspective, because as Portalmaster pointed out, if you think like an 8-year-old, it works.
That is true. They are the most impressive figures when you think of it like that. Although, I mean, I feel like I still would have liked the Giants a lot more, because they're about the same size, but those lit up. But still, they weren't as great when it came to the paint quality. The Imaginators definitely, like, I mean, I think if you're, like, throwing the senseis around the room, they're way less likely to, like, scuff up compared to, like, the Giants.
And likewise, they remind me too much of statues in a way. Their bases, like, dropping the real elemental bases was a really big mistake, in my opinion, because they look statuesque.
Yeah, now they feel a little bit more like Amiibo as opposed to, like, being frozen in place.
Which is what they were supposed to feel like in the first place.
Yeah, exactly.
Doesn't the lore state that these weren't toys to begin with? They were out there living beings, and they became toys when they were frozen and sent to us?
Well, that's the thing. We don't know about the senseis. They were just like, yeah, the senseis are here. So, like, with the senseis, we don't know how they got to Earth. But yeah, with the original, like, Spyro's Adventure lore...
Well, the Superchargers, too.
Yeah. Well, I don't know. They like, kind of cheese it with the Superchargers. They're kind of like, yeah, we've assembled this team. Like, Eon's assembled this team to, like, pilot these specific vehicles. But yeah, they kind of don't really say... After Trap Team, they kind of just drop the whole, this is how they got sent to Earth thing. They're just like, yeah, whatever, you know at this point. It was weird.
That's the question, though, is if Eon assembled this team, why didn't he just keep them in Skylands for us to meet with? Why would he have turned them into toys and sent them to us?
Oh no, it's weird, isn't it?
It is. There's inconsistencies, that's all.
Yeah, that definitely could have used a little bit more lore explaining. Wow, we went off on a side tangent from the side mode conversation, but...
Well, that's because Imaginators didn't have any side content to talk about.
Yeah, so that's the problem.
So I have a way to segue back into it. So, you know, one of the things about Imaginators was, I think, you wanted kids to keep buying these creation crystals, right? To really be able to experience Imaginators. That was the whole point, to be able to create your own characters and stuff like this. And this goes back way, way, way to all of the games, but... You know, when you didn't have a lot of post-game content, and this is how I always felt, if I hadn't been a hardcore collector, I probably wouldn't have kept buying Skylanders, because after you beat the game, you know, once, maybe play through it a couple extra times, you know, what's your motivation really to keep playing? And I think that when you had a lot of side content, like you did in Swap Force, it motivated you to buy more characters, especially when having, like, a new movement type would unlock such a huge side part. And I don't know, it's always been weird to me that they got rid of the side content, because that seems like it would have driven the extra figure sales. And that's why it's always such a mystery to me, you know, the latter 4 games, why they did what they did.
Yeah, it is weird. And I think maybe with their thought process behind Imaginators was that they figured, oh, well, people will just go buy these figures to be able to unlock the Sensei realms. But then the thing is like, you have to go out and buy a sensei of the specific element. It's just like the Trapmaster gates all over again. People were mad about that. It's just like, why not just have a fire realm and you can have any of your fire characters access it? And then if you didn't have a fire character, someone's way more likely to go out and buy, you know, one of the Supercharger characters or Trap Team characters that was still on the shelf and play that instead.
And then there's also the fact that they tried to push sales by locking a level cap increase behind each and every individual Sensei character.
Yeah. And then they didn't release Heartbreaker Buckshot, so it's stuck at 59.
Yeah.
It's just great. Thanks, Toys for Bob. And now, instead of trying to search for content that isn't in Imaginators, it's time for us to try to find some Skylanders that we can find in lots. It's time for a Legendary Treasure Hunt. Welcome to this week's Legendary Treasure Hunt. Legendary Treasure Hunt is a segment where we try to find the best deals on Skylanders for a bargain price. And this week's challenge was to try to find the lot with the most Spyro's Adventure characters for under $30. And as per usual, the scoring system that we're going to be using is 1 point for every Skylanders Spyro's Adventure character in the lot, and then half a point for every $5 under the max price the person is. And so let's go ahead and start off with our special guest star, Portalmaster's lot. So Portalmaster, tell us where you found your lot, what price it is, and some of the Skylanders that are included with it.
Okay, so I found mine just looking through the first 3 pages of eBay. It was the best one I could find. It is right at the price limit. It is at $29.99, free shipping, so 1 cent under the price limit. It's got Lightning Rod, Slam Bam, Drobot, Sunburn, Double Trouble, Flameslinger, Dino Rang, both Chop Chops, Zook, Cinder, Warnado, Wrecking Ball, Bash, 2 copies of Spyro, Eruptor, Trigger Happy, Legendary Trigger Happy, and Stump Smash. So an all-around, well-rounded group of Spyro's Adventure characters. It's like, I don't know, almost half of the original characters. So for $30, that's pretty good.
Yeah, that is pretty good. And you have a couple other bonus things in there, too. You have the Healing Elixir Magic item. You got 2 of the 4 adventure packs, so decent variety in the lot there. All right, so you have 20 characters total. And, you know, you have pretty good variety in there, and you have 2 Spyros, and you have 2 Trigger Happy, so you're able to put them on the different paths if you wanted to. And so that brings your starting total up to 20 points, but you are pretty much right at the max price, so you don't get any additional half points there.
I would like to say that I think Portalmaster deserves the extra special bonus point for this one, because that is a great deal.
It is a really good deal. So, yeah, you know, we typically award an extra bonus point for the coolest lot, or the one that kind of goes above and beyond. And, you know, this is pretty much half the roster of Spyro's Adventure, I think a little bit over that. And, you know, has some of the adventure pack stuff too, so pretty good lot. So, yeah, you get the extra bonus points, so that brings you up to a total of 21 points. Ooh, so that's a really high score.
That's the highest score we've seen yet.
I'm fairly certain it is, yeah. So, Ditto, tell us about your lot.
I found my lot on Mercari this week. And my lot includes 14 Skylanders from Spyro's Adventure. It has Wrecking Ball, Stealth Elf, Whirlwind, Flameslinger, Spyro, Sunburn, Dino Rang, Stump Smash, Igniter, Trigger Happy, Drill Sergeant, Gill Grunt, Sonic Boom, and Drobot. It also comes with a copy of Spyro's Adventure and a Portal for the Xbox 360, and a carrying case for the figures. All for the price of exactly $30.
Yeah, that's really good.
Yeah.
You know, yet again, you have a decent amount of the roster there, and, you know, you have a carrying case for them. You got the portal, you got the game, you pretty much have everything you need. And it's one of the best portals, too. So, you know, it's pretty cool. I don't know, I mean, I'm still biased towards the Traptanium portal, personally. But, you know, still, cool portal, cool carrying case.
Mine might score more points, but I think yours is actually a better deal here, because you get that carrying case and the game and the portal.
That is true. Although, I mean, I don't know. With yours, you do get the, you get the adventure packs, and you get a couple of the variants in there as well, and one of the healing items. So if you happen to already have Spyro's Adventure, or any of the Skylanders games, like, that's pretty good. That's a lot of different content there.
Yes, but some of the toys are actually broken. You can't see it very well.
Oh, no.
Yeah, Drobot has no wings, Chop Chop has no sword.
Ooh. Oh, no. Portalmaster's making a pretty good case to give you the extra point. Ditto.
Yeah, I was about to say, I think we need to retract that point.
No, takes these backsies, no point.
All right, well, I guess in that case, Ditto, you're right at the price limit, so you don't get any half points, but since you have 14 different Spyro's Adventure Skylanders there, that would bring your total up to 14 points, also a really high score.
Yeah.
So, pretty good. All right, so my lot I got from eBay and costs $24.99. So my lot consists of Voodooed, Gilgrunt, Drobot, Prism Break, Dinorang, Stealth Elf, Boomer, Spyro, Wrecking Ball, Zap, Terrafin, Trigger Happy, and Chop Chop, along with the Pirate Seas expansion piece, and also the Pirate Swords and Hidden Treasure. So it's a pretty good deal. I have 13 different Skylanders here, and I get a half a point for being $5 under the $30 price limit, so that brings my total up to 13.5, just half a point underneath Ditto's lot there. So it seems that Portalmaster has won this legendary treasure hunt this week, so congratulations.
Yay, go me!
Good game, Portalmaster. Good game. You found a great deal.
Yeah, you really did. I mean, you scored high.
I still like Ditto's lot, though. I don't know. Maybe it's because none of the characters are broken.
Yeah.
I mean, at least for me, that's a huge factor as to whether or not I'm going to buy a lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'd rather have a figure that's intact than one that's not.
Mm-hmm.
That's true. That's true. Although, I mean, unless it's like a massive lot, like, whenever you have like a 80 character lot or something, then like if one or two of them are broken, like it's not that big of a deal because you're getting tons of other characters that aren't. So
Yeah.
it's only then where I feel like I would probably consider that and maybe think it's worth it. I mean, overall, I think all these are pretty good deals. If you bought mine and Portalmaster's together, you'd have a couple duplicates. I mean, you'd have 3 Spyros, but you'd have a great deal of the roster. You'd get 3 of the 4 adventure packs. But as always, all these are really good deals, and it's always fun to try to come up with the best lot each week. So I think it's time for us to go head on to the Dread Yacht again and take our next tour. And Flynn's waving us over. He seems to be in quite a bit of a hurry. It seems like he's having a hankering for pies. So let's go ahead and quickly hop aboard and fly off to our next destination.
Today, we are entering into the Darklight Crypt, a dark, mysterious destination that was quite ahead of its time in the days that it was released. Darklight Crypt is full of all kinds of menacing enemies, such as the haunted armors that are not haunted during the day, but can be shifted into the night, and then they start running at you and swinging swords at you, which is very, very scary indeed. You also have thwomps stolen straight from Mario, basically. Except these thwomps are spooky thwomps, and when you turn it into the haunted mode, they stay only on the ground. Very menacing, I know. Also, at the very beginning of the level, you'll be greeted by this strange Swedish pie chef that is trying to sell pies to the people of the underworld for some reason. And for some reason, a giant floating eyeball says that no, you can't sell your pies here. Really? The story is not the greatest, but hey, there's a giant floating eyeball who says that there can't be pies, something like that. And at the end of the level, after you've gone through some of the hardest lock challenges that are present in Spyro's Adventure, you get to shoot the giant eyeball with a whole bunch of cannons.
Yeah, true. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to start out by trying to attack Batterson, so I'm going to roll my d20, and look at that, critical hit. We don't need to play the level anymore. No. Anyway, so
I'd like to point out that the world transition mechanic that we see here, this was the first time it was used, but we would encounter this again several times throughout the series.
yes.
This same mechanic would be used in the Willikin Village, it would go on all the way to be used in Fizzland.
Yeah.
In Skylanders Imaginators.
This is the Spyro's Adventure level that feels the least like a Spyro's Adventure level, in my opinion.
I would agree. Like, it felt like it was trying to be a little bit more platformery than what they were able to do by having all those blocks that were able to move / not move depending on what world you were in. So they tried to give it a little bit more verticality. And then also they had that whole world switching mechanic, which was really cool and really unique, at least in this level. In Willikin Village, once you've already seen it in Spyro's Adventure, it doesn't really feel unique anymore. And then I really, really don't like Fizzland. But Darklight Crypt, I actually think, does a really good job of taking this mechanic, having it be something new, and combining it with tons of other things that are going on in this level, like the rising and falling blocks and the harder lock puzzles and the maze. And I don't know, it felt pretty cool, actually. I really liked how they tried to take that mechanic and combine it in different ways.
I thought it felt very platformery, similar to what we said before in the past about Troll Home Security, how it tried to be platformy.
Yeah.
But I don't feel like it had that same feel that Troll Home Security pulled off, and I don't think it was successful at actually feeling platform.
Yeah, I can get that.
I'd like to know, if this is one of the levels that really inspired them to go after and add the jump mechanic, just because, like you said, it adds that verticality, but there's no jump mechanic in the game, and I do wonder if this is one of the reasons why they wanted to add it.
Yeah, it does feel like there were a couple places in this level, and also, in Troll Home Security and Giants, where it's just like, wow, you kind of wish you could just jump here.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
And it doesn't exist in this game, which is interesting because it definitely has the vibe of a dungeon crawler kind of level, like the Cadaver's Crypt and everything like that in the main game of Spyro's Adventure. This one feels like it's leaning more towards a platformer compared to a dungeon crawler. So it's weird that they have the verticality and I don't know, there's no jumping. Just kind of throws it off a little bit. Mm-hmm. But it is cool because it does not feel like a Spyro's Adventure level because of that in a lot of different ways.
I also feel like Oculus was an overused trope even back in 2011 when this game and this level was new. I feel like Oculus just, for one, it was obvious he was going to be the boss battle at the end of the stage from the moment you met him.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
And for two, the floating eyeball thing has just been so overdone over the years that I kind of wish they had gone with something else.
I can agree, sort of, that there could have been a better, little villain boss fight at the end, but I actually do like the boss fight towards the end, and I think it's part of what makes the level so good and so iconic. And I think that was another thing I really like Dragon's Peak for similar reasons, is that it has, that boss fight at the end. And I don't know, it feels like it tells almost like a complete story in the level in and of itself, and I really like that about it.
Yeah, I also like how the story is just absolutely, silly. It's just ghosts want to eat pie, but they can't because the evil overlord wants them to eat brains instead. Mm-hmm. It's really funny. It's really weird.
It's very fitting of the Skylanders series overall with how silly it is.
Yeah, so I like that, and I like that there's this villain that we do kind of have to go fight at the end. And I do really like the mechanic of the boss fight at the end, because you're having to try to activate all these cannons. You can only activate one before it explodes, and you can't use it again, so you have to go activate all of them. And then you have this circular arena that you're trying to run around, dodge lasers. You have the bark demons coming at you, so you have to avoid those. And then you also still, in that battle, have to switch between the different worlds to be able to activate the coil to be able to pull him into the real world. It's really cool how they tried to combine that mechanic that existed in the rest of the level and then also add it to this really cool and unique kind of boss fight. And I really kind of like the design of Oculus, especially in particular for this boss arena, because it almost kind of reminds me of a Panopticon, where it's he's kind of like the lighthouse, or the person in the center kind of being able to look out at all of the different parts of the stage at one time. It almost feels a little 1984-esque to me, and I highly doubt that that's what they were going for. I don't think they were trying to make a Panopticon kind of thing, but I feel like it fits with his character, because he's this overlord that's kind of overseeing what the ghosts are doing, and he's trying to keep an eye on the ghost world, and I think that kind of fits by them kind of having him also do that with the boss fight arena, where it's circular and he's able to kind of look different ways, aim his laser around the whole area. And I don't know, I feel like that kind of fits with his character quite well.
I feel like if it's anything, it feels very Sauron-esque, with the giant, eye that, can see everything. It's a giant overlord of an evil army.
Yeah, there you go. It's kind of Sauron-esque too, yeah, with that. So it kind of very true, and that also kind of feels very Panopticon-esque too. Maybe they didn't mean for it to come off that way, but to me, I actually kind of liked the design of him with the boss arena because it kind of gives off that kind of Sauron vibe or 1984 kind of Big Brother's watching you kind of feel to it, and I don't know, I thought it was kind of neat.
Now that you bring up the Sauron vibe, I can agree that that is a vibe that is kind of cool to be giving off. And, well, I feel like the boss fight itself was fun. I wasn't a fan of the design of Oculus himself. I feel like they might have been better off going with, say, a Beholder instead.
Mm-hmm. Okay. I mean, that's fine, definitely. But, I don't know. I feel like, giant eyeball looking out at everything. I don't know. I feel like it kind of worked, at least for the boss fight, but I don't know.
For the fight itself, it definitely worked.
Yeah.
It made the cannons make more sense.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, definitely. And, the eyeball laser, having this one, beam shooting out from the eye, it works, and I think it makes sense. Well, what about other parts of the level? Because we see a lot of different other things, too. The bark demons, of course, are here before they became super annoying and really powerful in Giants. And there's also that whole maze section, which I actually thought was pretty cool, how you kind of progress through that to be able to get all the different keys and explore the different areas. You have to push blocks out of the way. I don't know, I thought it was kind of pretty cool. And you also switch between the real world and ghost world a couple times in it as well.
I thought the maze was a unique and creative way to implement several of the mechanics from the entirety of the game, because you do have the block pushing and the keys. And I feel like for being DLC for the first game in the franchise, particularly in the maze area, it did a really good job of kind of just bringing it all to a head.
Yeah, the block pushing stuff, that is very much existent in the rest of the game, and, I think that's neat how they kind of brought that in to, block different parts of the maze. And the keys, of course, also very consistent from the rest of the dungeon crawlery elements from the rest of the game. And, yeah, I mean, I just thought that was a really cool kind of section to add. It wasn't really necessary, and it didn't maybe fit with the rest of the theming of the level too well, but it still worked, especially once they added in the ghost world real world switching mechanic, to where in one it's kind of like thorns, but then in the other it's like hedges. I thought that was kind of a neat touch.
I think the maze is a pretty cool little touch. It may feel a little bit different from the level, but one, it makes the level longer, and the whole level is really puzzly, I feel like, in general, compared to all the other levels. I mean, the Lock Goblin puzzles are kind of hard compared to some of the other ones.
Yeah.
And, you've got the platforming issues because you're, trying to deal with the blocks. You're shifting between the real world and the undead world. So I think the maze does fit overall, even if it doesn't look like it should.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. And plus, this is a DLC level anyway. People are, actively buying this separate from the game. So it makes sense that they'd want this to be a little bit longer. They'd want it to have a little bit more content to it. And this does actually feel like a decently long level, but it doesn't feel like a bad level because it's, really, really long. It actually is fun.
It doesn't feel as forced as some of the levels from, say, Swap Force.
Yeah.
It has actual length as opposed to forced length for content.
Yes, I would agree with that, because some of the Swap Force levels do feel at times like they go on just a little bit too long, like they could have cut out a section here or a section there.
A whole level here, a whole level there.
Yeah, that too. But here, it does actually feel like all the content is varied and fun and different. And, you talk about the lock puzzles. Not only do you have to, be able to interact with them, whether you're in the real world or the ghost world, you have to switch between worlds to be able to get them or to be able to get some of the treasure chests in this level. But also at the same time, the lock puzzles have the, evil lock imp in it. And that's cool. And the puzzles in them are actually pretty challenging. There is a decent amount of content to trying to figure those out as well. So I do also like them.
The lock puzzle that guards the legendary treasure, I sat there for 5 minutes when I was playing through it earlier, and I just gave up.
Oh yeah, no, I get that, because some of them are long, and then I think a couple of them, it takes 20 moves, and then it's perfect score. The minimum amount of moves is 15 to 20-ish for a perfect score to be able to get it exactly right. And it's just wow, these really are hard. They really try to make you think on them, which is, it's cool. I definitely do appreciate that. And then also the ghost model, I'm fairly certain is the exact same model of the machine ghost in Giants. I'm fairly certain on that.
I think you're right.
Looks like it anyway. Yeah.
I think so. I think you nailed it.
Yeah, so I think that's kind of funny that they repurposed that in Giants. But then again, when you only have probably 18 months of development before the game comes out, makes sense you would want to reuse some stuff. But still, I mean, I think that's kind of cool. Not as cool as the Leviathan from Leviathan Lagoon kind of being sort of reused / remade in Rainfish Riviera, but still kind of a neat little thing. Kind of like a Majora's Mask situation, more so in this case. Overall, I mean, I really actually like this level a lot, and I think that it's a lot of fun. I think it's a cool idea. The story's kind of silly, but in the typical Skylanders fashion, and there's just a decent amount of content here that's really fun.
With Oculus vanquished, you can now go get some of those amazing Swedish pies. You eat 50 of them, and now it's time for us to move on to the Archean Arena.
Welcome to the Archean Arena, where Portalmasters pit Skylander against Skylander in theoretical combat. This week, our special guest, Portalmaster, will face down Inklander in a battle to the finish. Let's start with you, Portalmaster. Which champion have you chosen to fight for you today?
I have selected the all-powerful Stormblade.
Oh, okay.
Stormblade is an air element Skylander of the ranged category, with a maximum HP at level 20 of 660, critical hit of 54, armor 29, speed 45, and luck of 24. Alright, Portalmaster, go ahead and tell us a little bit about Stormblade's moves and path options.
So Stormblade is a really fast ranged character, and her Featherblade throw, her primary attack, just lets her fling her little storm blades or swords, whatever they are, very, very quickly. Her secondary ability, Steeled Winds, allows her to perform a dash forwards, let her move really, really quickly. And she can use this ability repeatedly and start moving pretty quickly. Her third ability, Cyclone Surge, lets her jump into the air and fling blades all around her. And as she upgrades herself with things like Fan of Feathers and Feather Barrage, her blades become even more powerful as she can throw more out with Cyclone Surge, her third attack, and her primary attack. Additionally, her Storm Dive upgrade can let her dive and jump through the air much more quickly.
So, her primary attack, Featherblade Throw, hits for 15 points of damage, 20 if charged. Steeled Winds, her secondary attack, hits for 24 points of damage. And Cyclone Surge, her third attack, hits for 10 points of damage.
Stormblade features two upgrade paths, one that helps her feathered blades, and another one that lets her move more quickly with her dash abilities. Her first path, Blade Dancer, allows her to get the upgrade Fistful of Feathers, which lets her attack repeatedly while in the air to throw blades in front of her. Additionally, her feathered blades can become upgraded so that they do more damage with the upgrade Storm Size. Her third ability on this path is Feather the Storm, that lets her hit her third attack button repeatedly to fling swords out in all directions much faster and more powerfully. Her other path, Wind Warrior, lets her improve her dash abilities. Wind Wall allows her to destroy projectiles as she moves forwards. Sharpen Winds increases the damage of her secondary ability. And her third upgrade on this path, Downdraft, lets her slow enemies that are hit with her dash.
That sounds like a very formidable Skylander you've chosen there.
Yeah, Stormblade's definitely one of my favorite Superchargers, so, really, really powerful character, really fast character, really fun character. So this will be interesting considering who I have.
One of my favorites.
Yes, it will. Inklander, step up and summon your champion.
Yes, so the Skylander that I have decided to bring to the Archean Arena this week is from Spyro's Adventure, and it is Igniter.
Igniter is a mixed category fire element Skylander with a maximum HP of 720, critical hit of 60, armor 35, speed 38, and luck 22. Tell us a little bit about Igniter's moveset.
Right. So, Igniter's primary attack is the Flame Blade, where he has the Flaming Blade just deal damage through swinging the sword. The secondary attack is the Flame Form Mortar, where he's able to launch his Flame Spear in an arc towards his foes. And also the tertiary attack is the Mega Slam, where he's able to perform a massive area slam move on the ground, which is pretty cool.
Igniter's Attack 1, Flame Blade, hits for 52 points of damage. His Attack 2, Flameform Mortar, also hits for 52 points of damage. And his Attack 3, Mega Slam, hits for a whopping 83 points of damage.
Yes. As for his path options, the top path is Soul of the Flame, which has the flame form gain increased speed and damage. Explosions and Attack 2 fires 3 different forms. So that one is pretty cool. And then the bottom path is Blade Master, which has Attack 1 gain combos and increased damage, while Attack 3 gains charge. So he's actually, looking at his stats, not too bad compared to Stormblade. I was definitely getting a little worried there, but his health's pretty good, his critical hit's pretty good, his speed not as good as, Stormblade's, but still pretty decent. So, I think Igniter might have a little bit more of a fighting chance than I was initially thinking.
All right, so we have the 2 competitors for today's Archean Arena bout.
Yes.
But wait, there's a flash of lightning, a bright light, and another portal has activated.
Oh no.
And with the catchphrase, Magna Charge appears in the arena.
Oh no.
Magna Charge is a ranged tech element Skylander.
We're dead.
With a maximum HP of 840, critical hit 58, armor 33, speed 45, and luck of 26. Armed with an Attack 1 magnet cannon that does 25 points of damage per shot repeatedly with a 71-point finisher. The Magneto Ball Attack 2, which charges forward, dealing 71 points of damage. And Attack 3, Polarized Pickup, which picks up the foe for 55 points of damage and throws them, dealing 103 points of damage, both to the foe thrown and any foes hit by the thrown enemy.
Yeah. That's concerning.
Magna Charge's top paths are Magnetic Armaments and Static Buildup, which allow for Attack 1 to overheat and deal a fireball with increased damage, and Attack 2 gains additional damage when an enemy is thrown. Magna Charge's bottom paths are Magnet Turner and Drag Racer, which grants Attack 3 increased damage, and you can shoot dragged enemies without stopping.
Oh boy.
And also increases the damage of Attack 2.
Okay.
So now with 3 competitors in the arena, the battle begins.
Yes. All right. So I'm a little worried about Magna Charge there for sure.
Only a little bit.
Definitely concerning, especially because, he has that primary attack that's able to deal damage real fast.
That primary attack is terrifying.
Yeah, it has really high damage per second, so that's really not good. And then the being able to get dragged and thrown for so much damage is concerning. Although luckily a lot of our tertiary attacks seem to deal a decent amount of damage, but still...
I think the biggest advantage Magna Charge has is once he picks one of you up, you can't move until you are thrown.
Yeah, that is true. So
you can't move, you can't attack, he immobilizes his foes.
that's right. So my first strategy is going to be run away, so then Portalmaster gets attacked by that first.
Yes, but I outspeed him, though, because I have the dash ability.
That's true.
So
I also have a dash ability.
Right, so then I'm going to just instantly get destroyed then. I might be able to hold out a little bit because, I have slightly more health than Stormblade. Maybe I'd start off with a Mega Slam, just run straight into it, Mega Slam. But, yeah, this is definitely concerning. Or maybe use a Flame Form, try to do that a little bit more ranged, and hopefully that works out for the best. But still not looking too great because my primary is that Sword Slash, and that's not going to be useful because I have to get in close for that, and I really need to avoid Magna Charge.
I feel like I'm just gonna try to get a couple hits in here and there. By and large, I'm never really gonna stay in the same place for one moment too long,
Yeah, Definitely true. This is going to...
Stormblade is a character who does not stand still.
Yeah, this for me is definitely going to be just a thing where I'm trying to evade everyone. I'm just going to be trying to run away, because while, you know, Igniter does have, like, slight range in that secondary attack, it's really not much. You know, and he does have some decent power behind his attacks, but, you know, I definitely would be very concerned getting anywhere near Stormblade or Magna Charge. So,
and I would like to point out that the history pattern in the Archean Arena is any Skylander who spends the majority of their strategy fleeing is the first to die.
Yeah, so Igniter, my poor Spyro's Adventure character, is probably dead very quickly.
Okay, so maybe I change strategies up a little bit. I use the downdraft ability because it slows enemies that are hit with it. So I try to slow down Magna Charge just a little bit to make this a little bit more manageable for me, if I can get close to him.
That's definitely a valid strategy. My strategy with Magna Charge, obviously I would go with the top path because I like to have that overheat extra damage on that finisher. Mm-hmm. My strategy would be, well, you guys are trying to figure out what it is you're going to do, whether you're going to go for each other, go for me, try to run away from me. I've got all the range in the world compared to you two. I'm going to sit there and I'm just going to shoot you. And then when Igniter comes in close or Stormblade comes in close to try and use that downdraft or that sword, the one that gets closest first, I'm going to pick them up and I'm going to throw them at the other. And then I'm going to keep shooting.
What a way to, like, take out, like, two of the enemies in the arena. It's just like, yep, pick one up, throw them at the other, it deals the same amount of damage to both. End of story. Oh, no.
Magna Charge is an argument for why there shouldn't be more than 2-player PvP.
That's true.
Magna Charge is a solid argument against more than 2-player PvP. Because Magna Charge gets even more terrifying when there are more than one opponent, because he can just pick you up and throw you at each other.
That's true. Although that's not going to prevent Activision from capitalizing on that Battle Royale Skylanders once they realize it, if they haven't already.
I just know who I'm gonna make.
Yeah.
That's true. You know, if they keep pretty much all their same moves roughly, yeah, Magna Charge is always going to be a pretty good pick.
Hey, Magna Charge might have obliterated us both, but listen, I got to dive around with Stormblade, so I mean, who's the real winner here? Just skirting around the map the whole time.
Yeah, Stormblade's great.
Still me, because Magna Charge is also a boatload of fun to play as.
True.
I mean, Stormblade's a lot of fun too, so yes, you would be a winner there.
Yeah,
just not the winner.
That's right.
I do feel like Stormblade would pose a little bit more of a threat than Igniter to Magna Charge, because you do have the ability to throw daggers at me, and as such, I would probably focus the majority, at least in the early game, I would focus the majority of my ranged attacks on Stormblade because she poses a greater threat. I know very well that Igniter does have to get in close eventually. If I take out Stormblade first, even if that lowers me to extremely low health because I took several daggers, Igniter has to get in close to do anything. Even his slightly ranged attack, he is in range of being picked up and thrown.
Yeah.
And 100%, I am that kind of savage as a Portalmaster. I will utilize that and make sure he can't touch me.
Yeah. I mean, when it comes to Igniter, the only chance I might have is if you're going after Stormblade, and then I might be able to try to get a couple hits in.
Igniter's only hope is to flank me while I'm dealing with Stormblade.
Yep. That's
if I don't pick up Stormblade and throw her at him.
Yep, that's true. I feel like this is definitely Magna Charge here.
Yeah.
Although, Stormblade, pretty good.
When I decided I was just going to randomly drop a third Skylander in the arena, I thought this was going to be a lot harder to call. I do feel like Stormblade would stand a fair chance. Igniter stands 0 chances of winning any match.
Yeah.
In a 3-way of these 3 Skylanders, Igniter won't win.
Yeah, Igniter wouldn't win against Stormblade either.
Igniter is really not going to win against almost any ranged character.
Exactly.
Yeah, no. No, he has to go up against, like, another, like, close combat melee.
That all depends. If you have a ranged character with, like, no armor and the person playing Igniter is very aggressive, then it's possible.
That's true.
But in a matchup against 2 very powerful ranged Skylanders with experienced Portalmasters at the reins, Igniter stands 0 chance.
I mean, Igniter might have a chance going up against a character like Cinder, because Cinder really only has, like, the lightning breath. And, you know,
Yes.
her secondary and tertiary attack won't do any damage unless she's on a particular upgrade path. So, you know, Igniter could potentially win that depending on the upgrade path of, like, Cinder or whatnot. But yeah, Igniter will only win, I think, in a particular situation, which is not this one.
Right.
Or against a more melee character, Igniter stands a far better
Yes,
chance.
exactly.
But when you have two ranged characters, no, Igniter's done.
Yep.
I feel like Stormblade could probably win 1 out of 5 matches.
Yeah,
I would say
probably
that's fair.
against
1 out of
Magna
5, 1 out
Charge.
of 4, something like that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I would agree.
Something like that, yes. I feel like that's a pretty fair assessment because, well, Magna Charge is powerful. Obviously, the more battles we fight, the more you would learn with Stormblade and adapt to the fighting styles that are going on around you. And I feel like you could eke out 1 every 5.
Yeah.
Maybe 1 every 4 even.
Yeah.
I agree.
But all in all, I have to call it for Magna Charge being our champion this week for the first time ever in a 3 Portalmaster Arena match.
Yes, it was quite fun. Even though I got obliterated. Still fun.
Yeah. As Chill Bill would say, no chance standers they. I spend a lot of time in the arena in Imaginators.
Yeah. What else are you going to do in Imaginators? And that brings us to the end of the first season of Skylanders Portalcasters. And we want to send a special shout out to Portalmaster for joining us in today's episode. It's much appreciated, and it was great having you on.
Thank you for having me. It was a lot of fun.
Yes, it was great to have another voice here in the podcast. So you'll find our website and individual channels, including Portalmasters, listed in the description. You can follow our Twitter at SLPortalcasters for regular Skylanders discussion and Imaginator design challenges. Thank you for listening, and Season 2 of Skylanders Portalcasters will begin in summer 2021. But before that, we'll have a Valentine's Day and Easter special. So we'll see you all on February 14th. Bye! I mean, it doesn't really make sense, but it kind of makes sense, you know? So,
I do all the maths. Just nobody ever sees it because I edit it all out.
exactly.